We have we're a little early, 4:29, if everyone feels comfortable. Awesome. So June 10th, 2025, Carver County Library Advisory Board meeting. We do have a quorum. We're missing Charles and Sarah. Has everyone had the opportunity to review this week's agenda? I hear a couple yeses. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you. Could I have a second? Excellent.
And could you do me a favor and just say your name when you approve, because I'm still getting to know you.
Oh, certainly.
Sorry. So motion was
Orn.
Is
Wendy.
okay. Thank you.
And then the minutes from our last meeting. Any questions? Motion to approve?
So,
Second.
Second, excellent. Public comments.
Then you have to take a vote after you take.
Oh, shoot, sorry, a vote. Oh, no, did you guys both vote? Okay, sorry. So there's a motion and then a vote. Okay,
Right, yes.
okay.
Say all in
okay.
favor.
All in favor, say aye. Opposed? No nays. Okay, now public comment. Anybody?
Nope, as the public, I don't have any comments.
Excellent. Looks like we have an action item, our first action item. With Dee's move away from the board, we have an open spot for the secretary. Ern, are you at all interested in taking up that role?
Sure, happy to help.
Excellent. Do we have a motion to elect Ern?
I move we elect Ern for secretary.
Excellent, and I will second that motion.
Is it Ern or is it Orn? Orn.
Earn.
Ern.
Sorry.
So, all in favor say A,
A.
opposed say nay. No oppositions.
Yay.
Congratulations, we appreciate your help.
So,
What do you do?
what do you? I mean, I see Margot's taking notes. Is that part of the job, or do we keep on having notes taken by Margot, or what? Basically, how can I help?
Well, I know if Stacy's absent, then you would step in
Okay.
to chair the meetings. I know that piece. I don't recall, I'm looking at Jim, if the secretary actually took the minutes ever, or if it was,
Actually, the secretary at one time did. I don't think that's necessarily a good idea. But you should probably take a look at it before the meeting to see if you see any problems.
Right. So yes, I agree with you that it may at times be counterproductive for the secretary to take notes, especially if they're concurrently involved in conversation and discussion on the board, and sometimes stuff gets lost in translation or details. Stand in for the president at a meeting in case the president cannot attend. Then review carefully the minutes from the previous meeting. Anything else?
I think when I was, the brief time I had that role, the biggest thing was being prepared to kind of call the meeting to order and that
Okay.
kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
I did take notes and stuff, but I didn't have to turn them into anyone,
Okay.
just kind of for my own.
So, to keep my mind on track, I do take notes, and I've always been this way. This iPad follows me everywhere, and it just keeps me concentrating, and I like to just record details. One thing that I can add to the job description, if Margot feels this would be helpful, is I would be happy to help review the minutes from the meeting. I mean, I gather, Jody, you do that.
And we take turns,
You
it's not
take
just
turns,
me.
okay.
Yep.
If you
Yep.
want a third pair of eyes.
That would be excellent, because that's my anxiety, is that I miss something.
Right.
Especially if I get drawn into conversation. So being able to submit it to you and say, ask for your comments
Okay,
before
Happy to help
officially
with
submitting
that.
it would be great.
okay, happy with that, happy to help with that. So I've served as a secretary on various boards in the past, and one thing that I have done in that capacity has been to actually draft the agenda for the meeting. Obviously in consultation with board leadership, with, your counterpart, Jody. So I'll just throw that out as an offer. How are the agendas prepared? I mean, who writes them up? Is it the president that writes those agendas up?
Primarily myself and our administrative assistant. We have a
Susan.
template. Yes, Susan,
Okay.
exactly. Ready to go. We have a whole file folder
Okay.
prepped, but
Yep.
I'm not opposed to certainly, you could review that.
Only if you think it's helpful, only if
Okay.
you feel it adds value. It's not necessary, I'm not saying that should be done that way. Only if you feel it would add value,
Okay.
that's all.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you
my
again.
pleasure.
And my apologies, when we looked at the agenda review, I do have one item to add, and I think I'm gonna sneak it in between 5.2 and 5.3.
As do I.
It's quick. Oh, and you have one as well?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
so mine will be easy. Jody reached out to me and we have a really light, almost non-existent agenda for July. And it's not uncommon for the library board to choose to cancel the July meeting. So if people feel like that is reasonable, which it sounds like Jody and her staff have said it's not needed, I would look for a motion to approve the cancellation of the July meeting.
So moved.
Excellent. Vote on that. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent. July is canceled.
Whole month?
The July board meeting is canceled, which I think was, I don't have my calendar. I think it was scheduled for like the 9th,
Right after the,
right after the 4th
essentially after the
holiday.
fourth
Oh,
holiday,
yeah.
and then,
Right.
again, we don't have any policies coming due. And it's such a busy time of year for summer reading program, like right in the heart of it for staff too. So that's, in some regards, that's helpful on our end, but we're always willing to meet. But that's really, as you as a board, it's up to your discretion.
I would just make the comment that if something happens to come up, who knows what that could be, and it's probably unlikely that it will, and the board needs to have a conversation. How do you imagine that conversation being held if we don't physically convene? Would you call a Zoom meeting? Would Stacy call a Zoom meeting? Would there be perhaps an email conversation? What are you guys' thoughts about that?
Trying to think to our bylaws, but I believe that we can call a special meeting and it could be called as virtual. If it's just, especially if it's targeting one topic. We've done that, but not, I think during the pandemic, we had to do that once. Trying to remember, because we have to be cognizant of the public meeting laws that
Right.
surround that as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I will verify in the bylaws what that looks like for us. That's helpful.
Sure.
Good question though, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep,
Agreed.
especially in the current environment of, things changing with budgets and whatnot. And,
Yeah, I'm
absolutely.
thinking of
So,
partly in relation to the ongoing budget uncertainty. That kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. I get it. Did you want to put yours in at 5.1.2?
Sure.
What is your item?
So it's primarily an informational item with encouragement for further discussion. And I actually was chatting with Jim about this before the meeting, and Kevin jumped in on it. Wendy jumped in a little bit too, and Jody. It's the Imagination Library program. So several of you are familiar with the Imagination Library. Stacy, does that ring any chimes with you?
It does not.
Okay, so in a nutshell, Dolly Parton years ago, through her foundation, initiated a program called Imagination Library, and it's a program that distributes free books to children up to the age of 5, and it's an effort to promote literacy at very, very young ages, obviously further adding value to the work of K to 12, all right. Investing in people's, reading skills at very, very early ages. So Penguin Publishers distributes these books, and all around the country there are local affiliates of the Imagination Library program, and the Rotary Club of Chanhassen, a chunk of years ago, initiated an affiliation with Dolly Parton's national infrastructure. And there are other clubs that participate in the program, but we launched it in our club, and there are a number of my fellow Rotarians that are very, very involved. There's actually a Rotarian who works for the school district. Her name is Melissa Hansen. She works in the community education side of things. She's kind of the club's champion for Imagination Library. So the Dolly Parton Foundation funds part of the costs of acquiring and distributing the books, but it's expected that the local affiliates will match that funding. And it's, as you can imagine, an expensive kind of program. It's a lovely program. It has tremendous community impact. I'm sure none of us can dispute that. But it's expensive to the tune of $2,800 a month for what is being done locally, $2,800 a month.
So do you know how many children they serve?
Let me get back to you about that. That's a good question. It's a fairly sizable catchment area and a fairly sizable number of children, but postage is expensive. Penguin's a great publisher, but they don't make their books available for free. But the two kind of real local champions of this program are Lauren and Barbara Nelson. And Lauren and Barbara both taught for many years in the Chanhassen Excelsior School District. He was at Minnetonka High School. She was, I think, at West Middle School. And so they've made this their life's work. They launched this themselves in New Mexico, where they worked for many years, and then they came back here. So, cutting to the chase, I just got to thinking, after sitting in a meeting with Mr. and Mrs. Nelson, the level of awareness in the Carver County Library system of this program, any history of efforts to nurture linkages, nurture collaborations, whether it be endorsements, whether it be funding, financial support, anything, and looking ahead, looking to the future, what level of interest, what level of appropriateness is there for the county library system to be involved in this, and for this board to be involved in this? I mean, clearly, we're all trying to accomplish the same thing, which is we're trying to promote literacy. We're trying to promote building value in the community through reading and through the use of libraries. I mean, I can imagine how an upwelling of work in Imagination Library would complement, would add value to our local libraries. Little children will come into our libraries more frequently. Parents will get involved and so forth.
There's, Northfield Public Library has they are connected with the Imagination Library.
Mm-hmm.
And I do know there are other public libraries, I don't know of any more in Minnesota, I'm sure there are, that partner with a third party. They don't put money into it. It's funded completely by an outside, I don't know in Northfield who it is. I think I've got paperwork, but so it is a possibility. They also use the library as a drop spot for the books for when kids can come through and then they're free. So other kids can come through and pick up the books.
Okay,
Yeah,
so that's the Northfield,
Minnesota.
right, Northfield Library.
Mhm.
So they become kind of a site, if you will,
Yes,
for
and I don't
Imagination
know,
Library?
right, and I think it's minimum what they do, it's very, but I'm not entirely sure. They're pretty progressive organization in terms of and they also have the 2 universities there, so they do
Yes, of course.
a lot of colleges, universities, collaborative things, and they also have more resources, including staff resources, so
Okay.
that would be, that's all I'll say. It's a great,
County is Northfield in. I should know this.
Rice?
No,
No,
it's,
it's, It's not Dakota, it's South. It's
I
between-
M, does it start with an M?
Here,
I keep thinking the Cannon River goes through it, but I don't think there's
Yeah.
a Cannon County.
Oh,
It
it might
is-
even be Scott.
It's Rice County.
It is Rice County,
Yeah,
okay.
it is.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they're not in the metro.
And
It's-
their structure, that's cell code, so their structure is very different from
Right.
what we have.
It's.
They're sponsored by
Northfield
the
is
city.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
And one thing that I think we'd have to think about, because we're running our 1,000 books before kindergarten program, and what you said, Ern, ultimately we're all walking in the same direction to support early literacy. But how would those 2 programs walk alongside, if that makes sense?
Yeah,
Or not necessarily walk alongside, but
How would they get credit for the books, maybe?
They're- it's like a little tiny kiosk that they
Oh,
have.
okay.
So it's in the end, but their building lends itself very clearly to it in that it's separate enough area. It's not in the children's area. This is just one branch, by the way, I said, or one library, not branch, but,
so it's helpful to hear.
but they've got a very large entry area with seating and this and that. There's a little kind of cubby under the stairs. And you don't have to go into it. It's right as you walk into the main library. So it's visible. You have to walk by it in order to get into the main part of the library, but it doesn't interfere it doesn't conflict with the other books on the shelf. There's no question about it. And plus they're labeled, the books. So if there's a drop, the items are labeled, I think, when the kids get them by the foundation, so that there's not a thing. They turn up in book sales now and then. So I'd like to offer, if it's okay with you, to talk with Northfield to gather their information. I think they might do something like 1,000 books. I don't think they do 1,000 books, but I could be happy to look into it because I wanted to look into it anyway.
And if there are families that do the Imagination Library, I mean, they can read those and count them toward
Right,
right,
1,000
yeah.
books as well,
Exactly.
so.
Yeah, I just
and
wanted
they- yeah.
thoughtful about how the 2 programs could interact or
Right.
and in terms of promotion to families and whatnot.
And this is 1,000 books before kindergarten. Okay.
Right, yeah.
So they can get those books in.
Kind of
or-
similar. But I was wondering, you talked about awareness. Could there be a thing where the Carver County Library systems just put on like a half-hour, are you aware of the Imagination Library and its availability to you potentially, whatever, for families? Even just a bifold, that
Sure.
is displayed prominently at checkout or something like that with some of the higher level details for families, how to get involved or, reach out. Because I've heard of it, now that you mentioned Dolly Parton, I was like, oh yeah, she does have that thing where she gives away books. But that's kind of the extent of my knowledge about it, but,
Okay.
I think
that's.
that's a conversation also with youth services team
Mhm,
and
yeah.
seeing because they may have ideas, and also then communications team and just everybody, leadership.
I've found that it's amazing how excited kids get having their own
Yes.
book.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
My grandchildren are signed up for it, and they just love it when a book comes in the mail.
Right.
Yes.
And that's it, getting mail.
Right, just getting mail, yeah,
Well,
for
that's
a
a great
kiddo.
experience
Yeah,
for them.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
not just-
Oh my God, there's a package from me.
Right.
Yeah, but in response to your suggestion, I think it's a lovely suggestion. I mean, I'm imagining the system helping to amplify the message of what Imagination Library does, the value it adds. If appropriate, an endorsement of the program. Obviously, I'm not imagining providing funding because we're all strapped, you know, but perhaps I don't know, co-applying for a foundation grant, if that's appropriate, if that's inappropriate. At least being, you know, helping to be a champion for this. But the 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten concept, which I wasn't aware of until you just brought it up, exploring linkages and complementarities with that. So I would love to be part of that conversation, Margot, that you have with Northfield, so I can learn more about the 1,000 Books program and Imagination
1,000
Library.
Books, you should talk with our team
Okay.
and not Northfield, because
Got
we
it.
have, everybody does 1,000 Books a little differently. Like I did it in Great River Regional Library System, and we did it differently than we do it here in
Right.
Carver County.
Okay.
So but I guess from a youth services perspective, on one hand, I love giving books away. I love it. I love it. I love kids getting things in the mail. I love every part of it. However, I feel like there are things that we need to put our energy and attention to in the county, especially right now. But so if I look at this, or would like to suggest that it's a good information gathering time, but it's a process because, and I don't know, we have a lot of things going on. There are a lot of things we want to do. I've already just at our last meeting talked to youth services about really amping up 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten. And that's not to take away, but with that and with our teams working on building programming, and we've already applied for grants to get funding for books to help supplement the READ Act, the activities going in school. So we're doing a lot, and we're just getting started. And I think if I were to come too soon without enough, I'm sorry, I just cut my leg.
Oh, that's the worst. Oh, no.
Sorry. So if you keep doing this, it's not because my ankle itches or my shoes come up. It's because I'm trying not to bleed on the carpet. But at any rate, so I am very much in favor of it, and I was actually looking at doing this in partnership with United Way in Elk River before. We didn't get very far because she had staff layoffs and she didn't have time to do it. But I mean, just from that youth, I'm cautious, but it's one of those things, like I like to cast a very wide net and have lots of ideas and background, so when the time comes where it's right, we can plop it in a little easier.
Understood.
So if that's, I mean, I don't know, that's my
I understand.
bias.
Yeah, I understand.
But if we could find, well, maybe the whole board would like to learn more about
Mhm.
1,000 Books Before Kindergarten.
Mhm.
I mean, that'd be something that,
Mhm.
whether you on behalf of youth services or have another representative
Mhm.
just come and share a brief, like, summary about that, an opportunity to ask
That'd be
questions.
wonderful.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, absolutely, as you connect with Northfield, I mean, Earn, if you want to be connected into that
Sure.
too,
If it's-
however.
If you're all right with that, if you're
Yeah.
comfortable with that.
What I try to do is reach out toward the end of summer, because we're all doing summer reading.
Yeah.
And probably actually in the fall, when they've had time to recover, and clean all their books and all that. And then just make that initial contact and then see full in. I know a couple people down there in youth services, so just to kind of see, because they might be like, oh, we're getting rid of that. So just to get things going, and then we'll work together if that's
Sure.
okay.
Let me follow up, not to take up any more time with this, but let me follow up with both of you to talk about this a little more.
Perfect.
Okay?
Yeah.
So I view my role, I mean, I'm in the Rotary Club, I'm on this, I'm learning about Imagination Library, just learning now about 1,000 books. I'm trying to see how I can be helpful in extracting, in nurturing any complementarities between these two programs, all for the purpose of supporting
Right.
early childhood literacy. That's really where I'm
Yeah.
coming from. So,
Excellent.
okay. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you
for the
for bringing-
time.
Yeah.
Should I put as an action for maybe the December meeting to have, because I'm trying to get something pushed out for January, which was very successful for me elsewhere. So if we had somebody come in and talk about 1,000 books, I'm sorry, read my mind.
Oh, absolutely. That'd be wonderful.
In December?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you bet. Sure.
Okay, then the next item is the unattended children and vulnerable adults policy.
Should have been adult. There was a
Oh,
typo.
yeah, I was reading it, so yeah, it looks
Yes.
good over here. Looks like there's not too many changes, a couple of pronouns, a change of pronoun, and then just that you remain with the child versus.
Right, and stressing that 2 staff members should remain for safety and liability.
Sure.
And that would be helpful, we felt as a leadership team, be more directive, even though this is at the policy level, but be more directive for staff to understand that as well. But in many conversations, I've felt it's very, very important to have 2 staff members remain.
Yes.
So, feel really strongly about that.
Okay to ask some questions about this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, in some of the documentation showing metrics, like circulation, the circulation numbers, there's a distinction made between juvenile and teen. I noticed that, and hold that thought as well, something I want to ask you about later. But technically, when we say children, we're talking about people that are below the age of 18, up to, but not including the age of 18, is that correct? So we're not just thinking about toddlers and tiny tots, we're thinking about adolescents too, correct? Okay, all right. So I used to visit libraries all the time as a child. It was actually one of the greatest outings that I can remember from my hometown in Oregon. It was a great thing to do. Most of the time I didn't go with my parents. So I'm sure that our library system has a lot of children that come in during the summer in particular to get stuff. Sometimes they come with friends and sometimes they might misbehave. So the 4 bulleted actions that are described, a child is engaged in behavior that is disruptive to other library users, child is involved, blah, yada, yada, yada. Does this assume that the child is unattended? Is it assumed that there is not a parent and or a caregiver present?
I see what you're saying.
I
When
do
these
too.
actions are
A
taken.
15-year-old or something who's,
Well, they say, or will try to contact a parent, guardian, and or caregiver of the situations.
But is that contacting the parent in-house, where the parent maybe is on the other side of the facility? Or is it that the child has come in alone, or maybe with a friend?
I've experienced that in another branch in our system
Okay.
when I worked here before. And it was one summer of kids that did not have, they were unattended children. And so, but their parents were contacted eventually through channels because the disruption was big enough and
Sure.
active enough that it was not just disruptive, it was dangerous to the kids themselves and the other people in the library. So
Right.
they weren't in there, but it would be the same thing. Like if, and currently right now, we have staff in another one of our branch that one of the bathrooms is outside of the library. And they will say to a parent, because they'll leave their 2-year-old, 3-year-old, that, we can't be responsible for your child, or I'm gonna run to my car
Sure.
and get my whatever. So, and that is just to be polite and say something to them because we can't be responsible. And so it's both.
Okay, yeah, and in fact, you're partially answering a question that I was going to ask, which is suppose that you have a couple of young adolescents who are behaving inappropriately or making noise, whatever, and a parent is there, but the parent isn't doing anything about it. They're not doing what we want them to do, which is to, discipline them. Is it within the right of a staff member, the parent's presence or caregiver's presence notwithstanding, to take unilateral action. If the parent's not doing anything, can a staff member take action? Or are there issues with that?
That would go under like the general behavior guidelines. And if they're a disruption to other people in the space and you've talked to them, then they can be asked to leave.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so it doesn't matter then if a parent or caregiver is present. But, all right, but in terms of what I heard before, I'm wondering if, the third paragraph, which starts out by saying that library staff will take actions as outlined below, and these are similar situations. Would it be a good idea to precede that language with, if a child is on the premises of the library unattended, comma, library staff will take actions as outlined below, and these are similar situations? No?
Can you repeat it one more time? What you just said? Sorry.
So, these 4 bulleted situations are situations where presumably the child is unattended, right? So what I'm suggesting is that we start out that paragraph by saying, if a child is on the premises of the library unattended, comma, library staff will take actions as outlined below, and these are similar situations.
As the policy is for unattended children, I don't know that would be necessary, since that's what's being addressed with the policy.
Well, but yeah, I understand, but the previous language is a little vague about whether, it says that a child should be in the library with a parent, guardian, or designated caregiver. Okay,
I think
fine.
that's the little bit of slice of gray that we have and correct me if I'm wrong, but my experience is that there are kids who come in without a parent, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
If they are young and they're crying or this and that, so to put that statement in here, if a child is on the premises unattended, the library staff will take actions as outlined. That means every kid that doesn't come in with a parent we'd have to take action, and that's not just there hasn't been a need for that. It's when a child is crying because the parent has got out on the parking lot and has been on the phone for 10 minutes. It's when the kids are running around and throwing things. So it's the things that are in the bullet points that would prompt a library staff person to have concern and to go to the person in charge or the librarian in charge or whoever's in charge that day, and then address the situation. So if I'm understanding correctly, I'd be worried about saying, it sounds like we're saying kids can't be alone in the library.
No,
If we say an unattended child is on the premises, if a child is on the premises unattended, library staff will take actions.
But the presumption there is that they may come in unattended.
Right.
But if a parent or caregiver is not there and we see these behaviors,
Right.
then library staff have the prerogative to take these actions.
Right.
That's really what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But you're saying that the little bit of gray area that you referred to accounts for the possible situations where the parent is actually on site.
No,
But
I think
no.
I'm misunderstanding. I was talking about, because I don't want to go in the weeds too much
No, I
with
don't
it for you,
know.
but or take you.
It's okay.
I just, I was hearing what you were saying as saying if a child is unattended. When you said, because if a child is on the premises unattended, library staff will take actions outlined in these similar.
If these situations
Right.
occur.
I mean, I think my gray gray area is to be careful about not suggesting that kids can't be in the library by themselves, even though we go on to say that. So really, it's maybe
Mhm.
all the same thing.
I think we are saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we do allow unattended children.
Right.
But if they're unattended and they're behaving in these ways as described,
I see what you're saying.
library staff have the prerogative to take these actions if need be. It's just that's not, that's not crystal clear in the policy. And what I'm envisioning is a possible situation where there's an angry parent out there who sees a staffer dealing with a situation that they couldn't for some reason or wouldn't deal with themselves, and they decide to take some kind of action.
The parent decides.
The parent, yes. You know, don't you do anything with my daughter or son. That's my job, you know. Don't you try to discipline my child. That's my job.
Do we cover that, excuse me, do we cover that in any other policy, like expected behaviors in the library? Just blanket?
Yep, it's
Not,
our-
not children, not adults, just
Yep.
blanket,
So
this is what we
that's taken care of
expect.
by the general
It's our-
behavior
yeah.
guide.
Okay,
Public
this is
conduct.
what we expect.
Okay.
So I guess I see what you're saying, but I also see what Margot is saying. And I know, right, like it's
Same thing.
kind of like, it could go either way. I don't have a strong feeling either way.
Well, the second paragraph, a child should be in the library with a parent, guardian, or designated caregiver.
It doesn't say must, it says should.
Right, because
But-
we want to keep that space open for
Agree.
people to come in there.
However,
That sentence, I think, is the main point of this policy.
however, we're talking about
Right,
kids that
right.
may be 17,
Yes.
17 and a half even.
Yeah.
17 and 99 100.
I mean, truly, that line does not apply to kids 17.
I
Or
mean,
even
it does, but the expectation is that you still abide by, the good citizenship of this policy over here. You conduct yourself respectfully, you're relatively quiet, you're not causing a ruckus, quiet conversation with your friends is fine, but nothing disruptive. I mean, I'm all for policy, but I also don't want it to be like 17 pages long because we're trying to solve for every individual item that could possibly come up. I don't know that that's.
And ultimately, with the public conduct policy, which really points to these behavior challenges as well, that's saying staff have the authority. That's the wrong
That's
word
not right.
probably, but with any.
They're empowered
they're
to,
empowered, thank
yeah.
you, any age group to say you're not behaving appropriately, and unfortunately, like if a parent really pushed back,
It would have to escalate.
the parent might
potentially.
escalate to the level of the public conduct policy as well.
In Chaska, it's so
Right.
easy. The police department's right there.
Okay.
I don't know if that helps or answers
Yes,
a
yes,
little
it
bit
does,
further.
it does.
Yeah.
I had been imagining this as having a little more concreticity because of this gray area that you mentioned, Margot, but I can see how the gray area actually is a good thing to have. Okay. It just was not clear to me if this language was referring strictly to situations where children are unattended, or whether it's possible that these actions could be taken if there are parents on site.
So this one, I would say, in my mind, this one points to unattended, and the public conduct policy would point to if they
Okay.
had to intervene with.
All right,
Yeah.
okay.
I think that's maybe the clarity
Then
that I
that
would give
helps
it.
a lot.
Yeah.
That helps a lot.
Is there anywhere where it explains how you should act in the library?
In the
That's
public
the general
conduct
conduct,
policy,
okay.
like for all
Well,
ages.
then
Yep.
we should refer to that here rather
Yes.
than unattended.
I view this really as, I don't want to say superseding, but it's really complementing.
Supplementary.
It's supplementary, thank you, it is supplementary,
Mhm.
right, and I think you raise a good point of referencing that, or somehow,
Well, the purpose here is really how the library staff deals with an unattended child or a vulnerable adult. It
Right.
really has nothing to do with how they're acting in the library. That's under conduct.
Yeah, it touches on that because again, like if an 8-year-old who lives around the block and walks to the library at 2:00 every Tuesday with grandma. And grandma's over in the adult section, and the 8-year-old starts acting up in the kids section. The library's first gonna be like, where's your grandma?
Mhm.
And then go, hey, John is, having some trouble, you might wanna check on him. But if John walked there on his own, then they're gonna be like, well, we gotta call grandma. She stayed at home today. We need to call her and come get, am I reading that right? I mean, it feels like I'm getting into the weeds.
No,
but-
or grandma may be
Yeah.
there, but has a hearing.
Or, you're right,
Has a hearing problem.
right, so.
Or a vision
Just
problem.
kind of, yeah.
And also, coming from Wasika Sewer, I know that there's a similar policy simply because some people would just drop their kids off
Right,
as
yes.
daycare.
Right.
And so just making it clear that you are in charge of your child
Right.
is important.
Yeah.
These are, this has been, I wouldn't say challenging, but because there's a little bit of gray area to it, it has been challenging as a leadership team to talk through and make sure, just as we just had this was a good conversation about this, really good questions for clarification.
Yeah. So we take a vote on this, right? Or we just
You need a
approve it?
motion.
A motion to approve?
Motion, yep,
Okay.
and then a vote as well.
Okay.
Yep.
So we reviewed this quite a bit. If nobody has additional comments or questions, do we have a motion to approve?
I motion we approve.
Excellent.
I second the motion.
Okay, do we do a second for a motion? We do, okay. I'm getting so confused. And then a vote. Do we vote to approve? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Not me. I'm not saying nay. Sorry. Approved. When we became library board members, I remembered Commissioner Fahey giving me a book. Did it have all of the library policies in it? I know I can find them on the website, but I remember he gave me a book.
Likely
A three-bound,
does. It should
okay,
have all the
okay.
policies, but they are also available on the website.
Which might be the better place because,
Because that's where we'll land. So, the process after this is that I take the newly adopted policy, obviously change the text all to, the same color and whatnot. Take the strike throughs out, but then I will send it, usually the next morning to our web administrator, and she updates the policy
okay.
with the latest one.
I was just thinking it could be valuable to just read through them, Okay, agenda item 5.3, additional funds for extended access project.
And actually, this no longer needs to be
Oh.
an action item,
And
but I just
a-
wanted to give some background. We will have actually some additional technology funds in our levy budget, or I have some MELSA funding that I can draw from. So rather than go through the approval process, because it would have to go like Land County Board if we were to, through the Dalkey grant process. So I'm making everyone's, but I'm happy to. So let me explain too a little bit. So this, we have two vendors for extended access. Biblioteca, which is the hardware and software for the keypad entries for patrons to be able to utilize the service. Then Bloom Technology will install all of the security cameras, the speakers, anything audio-visual related to the security system. And when we went out to work with County IT on this part of the project, Bloom has been working with Carver County, and so that was the recommended vendor for us to utilize. And costs came in a little bit higher, partially because things are a little bit higher in general, and just noting the full package that we really needed to have the full security in place. So, but we'll be fine. We have funds that can cover it, and it's a great learning experience in terms of just implementing extended access and understanding all the various components that we need to make sure that we have in place. So if you have any questions about that, I'm happy to try to answer.
Well, with Bloom, I did a little checking on them, and I see that they are a provider of services to school districts and to schools. But I also recognize that the services that they provide are doubtless portable to other settings, other venues, like libraries. Am I correct?
Correct.
With that?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I was just curious as to why the additional funding wasn't going to Bibliotheca, because they're a more natural, I mean, they're in the extended library access space. And then looking at a couple of others, Clarivate, EBSCO Information Services, do these ring any chimes? OCLC, of course, Cersei Dynex that we've talked about before. There's also Fall at School Solutions. I gather that bids were solicited from some other, okay.
Sorry, I'm going back to your first question. We did not, Biblioteca and actually the other vendors that we went to original bid with said, indicated they are not in the security camera realm,
Okay.
like that's not
Okay.
their, they actually recommended to us during like the bidding process and during the visits that we had that they said you should go with a dedicated like a company that knows security cameras, knows the server you need and all of the components.
And even though
Yeah.
they're provider primarily to schools and school districts, that technology is just the sweet spot of what we need in our system, correct?
Correct, and
Okay.
they've been doing work in the government center. I believe Bloom outfitted the whole county boardroom now recently with some of the conference call and conference video capabilities as well. They've done a little bit of work in our Wilder room when we needed
Okay.
repairs on that system as well, which I realize is different than a security system, but our county IT, they came very strongly recommended from county
Sure.
IT.
Okay,
And just
great.
the level of customer service, I think, was a huge piece too, that they have had really good experience in terms of when there's been if there's been any sort of issue, Bloom's been on it.
Oh, great,
So,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, they look good.
So they'll have a lot of
That's
experience retrofitting buildings if they've worked with schools.
I think so, yes, yes. And they're a local company, St.
Right,
Paul, so.
and it's nice to have one company sort of managing all of the tools of the same kind in your organization. When you start adding in onesie twosies, like we got a better price over here, it was
Right.
less, but now nothing works because it doesn't talk to that. So,
Well, right, and if you're having those customer service experiences and you get to know that team and they know our county IT system who will need to be part of this project and partner with us, so, I mean, I think that's a plus as well.
Absolutely.
That response time is critical. That's a real critical piece
It
Sure.
is. It is.
that you want to consider.
Okay.
So no motion or vote needed on that one.
thank you. Phew. Administrative reports. We don't have any unfinished or new business. So administrative report.
And if I could just note on the unfinished and new business, that's something that if you all ever have a particular topic that you would like to discuss or learn more about or have an open conversation about, we've done that in the past.
And just as I said, we don't have any, I thought of something that I was gonna ask about because that's how the world works in my brain lately. Canopy. I'm sure you've heard of Canopy. And it's available in Hennepin County, but it's not available to MELSA. And I can't quite, it must be something with the funding because I heard it's quite expensive. But for those of you who don't know, Canopy is it's like a streaming service with your library card. So it's sort of like Netflix, but you log into Canopy with your library card and library pin, and you get so many credits per month, right? I don't even know if a credit is 30 minutes or a credit is an hour or what, but have we ever looked into that at Carver County? I'm guessing it's just really expensive
It's been,
yeah.
And that's why St. Hennepin has it only for their.
Right, it doesn't
users.
extend to MELSA.
Doesn't extend to MELSA. And there's other streaming services such as Hoopla, that's another one.
Okay, and we
Others.
do have that, right?
Nope.
We don't have that either?
No.
Okay.
They're comparable to some degree, but they have different pricing models
Sure.
as well.
Okay.
We do have, currently that is sitting in the 2026 budget request for a streaming service.
Oh,
with the
cool.
county.
Okay.
It's something that we feel down the road, because there'll be more MELSA systems that will be offering streaming services, and that eventually the format of the DVD
Right.
is
That's gonna
going
be-
to.
It's already starting to disappear.
Certainly. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
I don't know, if Margo or Kevin have any other insight on it, but
Yeah, I when I was in Montgomery, we investigated that too, and it was just far too expensive.
Cost prohibitive. Yeah.
So we went into the gray zone of copyright, and we bought Roku sticks and paid for subscriptions.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. So then patrons could check them out, kind of like a book.
Yeah.
Oh my
Okay.
gosh.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's.
Which is,
Deactivate.
I had to do all kinds of investigating and how many concurrent streams you can have for
Right.
per
Mhm.
subscription. It's such a gray area.
Completely. No.
Yeah, the
Consider
county
it
would not like
tabled.
that.
Right. No. Consider it tabled. I
Yeah.
happened to like stumble upon Canopy on, I think, Instagram, and I was like, "What is Canopy anyway?" And so then I went to the site, and it was like, log in with your library card. So I'm like, "Oh, here we go." And they're like, "That's not a library card that works." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Well, what is?" How happened? I was like, "I don't have one of those."
is it Anoka that has the crafting?
Yeah, I
uh,
think so. I know which one. We used to have it.
I forget what it's called, but there's
Creative
a
bug.
Creative
Yes.
Bug, and
Oh.
so
Or-
it's on-demand craft classes, arts and crafts classes.
Oh my gosh! So I have to go visit a friend and have her
I
log
know that
on.
Melsa's
That's
been
it.
really investigating that recently as well. The problem with Creative Bug is that it was owned by Joanne Fabrics.
Mm.
So I don't know if that's gonna be
Sure.
longer either.
Yeah, that's, okay. Cool, well, thank you for having the conversation with me, because I was not aware.
Thanks for the question. Love it. So, I think I will end up blending a little bit of the budget update with the library director's report, but some of the main big picture pieces, I just want to mention we're continuing to monitor our sub-budget very closely, and I'll explain more why in a moment. Currently looking at furniture replacement and upgrades that are needed across the system, if any. Not every branch has a need, but several do. So looking at that, I'm currently just in the process of, well, I shouldn't say just, but in the last few weeks and this week, we're working on 2026 budget planning with the county. So, but what I wanted to note, and I included that in my library director's report, to get my notes up here. So we currently have five vacancies that we are unable to move forward to fill right now. And so that's why we're monitoring our sub-budget very closely. Per direction of the county at the moment, with a lot of budget uncertainty right now. And I know that's putting a hardship on our service and information desks and making sure we can maintain those service hours with the staffing that we have and the subs that we have. We're doing fine right now on the sub budget, but we're gonna start to dig deeper on that. So we don't know, no timeline as to if and when that those vacancies will be able to move forward. So we're right now talking as a library leadership team, particularly for fall, if we need to cut back on programs and outreach in order to focus on covering our public-facing service and information desk hours.
And we are.
And we are in the works of doing that. We're going to try and maintain everything as best we can for summer, noting that if, however, there's a staffing emergency shortage, then we may have to cancel a program or cancel outreach. We're talking actively as a management team, how do we maintain communication if we need to call upon someone who regularly works in Chanhassen, maybe is able to come out and cover a shift. I know I've seen other staff coming over to Chaska recently to fill some shifts there too. So just really wanted to make you aware of where we're at currently. And I can try to answer any questions that relates to that, but.
So does the holdup, if you will, of getting clarity on whether we can move forward to fill these vacancies, does that help explain why, if you look at the system's full and part-time salary expenses and how much of those have been spent proportionally relative to what had been budgeted, I'm noticing that it's only about a third. We're 50%, we're practically 50% through the year. It occurred to me that maybe May payroll hadn't been built into the numbers, but between 31 and 35%, I think 31% for part-time, 35% for full-time, has only been accounted for. And is the holdup really explaining that?
The holdup is it's bringing new people in, new salaries.
Okay.
Is the holdup.
All right.
It's,
Like what you're seeing here are vacancies that we had other vacancies that maybe have already been filled, say, I'm pointing at you because your position.
I got filled.
Your position, the branch manager position was vacant for most of January, February through
half of March,
between
half months.
So that would fall under the permanent,
Right.
and that would account for some of that.
That
And also-
35%.
Yeah.
And also, the adult services librarian in Norwood Young America, that was vacant.
That's been vacant
for
since January as well.
Also,
Right.
We've
your
got-
positions.
yeah, and even though that is unspent money, we're on a freeze, we just can't, we're not allowed to at this point.
Continue
Okay.
hiring, yeah.
Right, so these vacancies are new lines? Or
No, I
they're
think
they're
they're
not,
lines.
they're
Yeah.
existing lines?
I think
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Which are reflected in the 2025 current budget column. I mean, 2,026,755 for permanent, 1.111 million for part-time. Those lines are in those
Right.
allocations, but
Correct.
only 35% of the permanent allocation has been accounted for, has been spent, and 31% of the part-time level, because we're in a freeze.
Right.
Right.
So
Right.
that
First,
salary
because
is
it takes a
being
while
paid.
to get things
Right.
going.
Got it.
So
Right,
it doesn't
yeah.
just happen, she left, I wish it would. She left and this happens.
Right.
Or he left, whatever. So it takes time for that to go through the system, the ER system.
Got it.
And so there's time anyway, and then during this time is when this freeze happened. So
Okay.
there were some or about to be, or maybe gonna be in process, or were and then weren't, and so anything that didn't get, so the money was there, but we're
Yes.
not doing anything.
But the
They're
worst
not
case scenario is that the county, given perhaps new information that comes in, will not allow some of those vacancies to be filled after all, even though they were allocated. Is that a possibility?
Depending on what new information, they've been waiting on the state budget to see where that lands. Particularly
Oh,
watching
gosh.
if the HHS, Health and Human Services, budget was gonna be pushed out locally to the counties to support.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a really broad way of explaining it, but essentially, yeah.
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 Okay. No, I understand.
So, waiting on that,
Yeah.
obviously, and kind of seeing where we land with that. And then noting the library services are what are designated discretionary as opposed to something that's statutory.
Right.
So, although there is a memorandum of understanding, that's not the right word, but that the county has to meet a certain level of support still, for library services, yeah, through state library services. So,
Too complicated for mere mortals.
so we're just having some really hard conversations
Yes.
as a leadership team, especially when we have staff that are so passionate about, and communities that are so actively involved in the programs, the outreach that we do, and wanting to maintain what we can. So we'll keep you posted on that for sure.
Yeah.
But we also, I said, I also want to we need to have these conversations now so we can be prepared, be proactive, whatever happens, so, yeah.
And it does, I feel the need to say, it really does impact us.
Oh, of course.
I'm sitting here stone-faced or whatever, but it really impacts everybody. And when that impacts our communities. So libraries are really awesome at taking on things. So the other balance is to try to make sure everybody's healthy, that we're
Right.
not taking on too much, not saying, oh, but we could, oh, but it's so easy, because that's what library people do. So it's not easy.
Well, I appreciate you all pulling through to make it through the summer, because that's certainly the hardest part with the kids, right? Kids out of
Oh, yeah,
school and all
yeah.
the things that need to be done, and hopefully things, I am not a news watcher, but I have heard about the Minnesota budget, and it's still,
Proved it.
they did approve it, that's what I thought. So I'll have to look in, I don't know what that means how it flows down to us, but.
There aren't a lot of details because they just wrapped it up like at 2 a.m.
I was gonna say, it was like
Right.
today, it was
Yeah.
not a week ago, okay.
Although it
Okay.
feels like it.
I know, right? It does feel like we've been talking about it for a really long time. Cool.
Well, whatever the board can do to advocate for the system, I mean, there are some pretty strong metrics for the system which underscore the high productivity, the high value brought to the population, and the hard work on cost controls. I mean, there's some good advocacy that can be done here for this system, in that these particular lines are critical. They're not essential, they're critical. So whatever, we as a board can do, whether it's advocating to appropriate constituencies.
I will say the one benefit to this is it forces us to look at what we're doing and why we're doing it. And that anything that we've been doing is wrong or bad or anything like that. But, the world changes, library changes, communities change. And so it is, I don't turn that frown upside down ever, but I am trying to look at the silver lining in it, because I do think there's a lot of opportunities in it. And in a way, it's kind of good that it's happening because the kids are really joyous.
Right,
Right,
yes.
And it is insane and crazy, but it's kind of uplifting, and it reminds us, very vocally, very physically, with the energy of
Yeah.
why we're there.
Why we do
So,
what we
right,
do.
Yeah, so,
Absolutely.
It's just, when you can make I think you have a pretty solid argument if you can demonstrate that customer demand is rising. I mean, just the last month's metrics on circulation compared year to year support growing demand. And then if that's concurrent with vacancies not being filled, I mean, I can't think of anything more compelling. If you have growing productivity, in terms of customer demand, but also just greater efficiencies within the system, holding all resources equal. That to me there's strong advocacy work that can be done to parties that need to know this.
But it's easier to tighten library budget than many of the
Exactly.
other things.
Yes.
What did, you used a good word, a memorandum of understanding, like the library system is seen not as a requirement in the budget, but like as a nice to have. Was that a correct understanding, like with the state budget, they
think so.
consider library services a nice to have, but not a requirement, right? And that's a bummer, because everyone in
Yes,
this room is like, it is a requirement, it is a must-have.
Yes, it
It
is.
Well,
is just like,
especially, you get those people who just can't afford things.
right,
And the library is their lifeline.
right. They might have to wait to watch the newest release on DVD, but they can still get it from the library in 3 months, whatever. Which is what, I know I'm
You shared-
simplifying that, but.
Out the MLA website, the Minnesota
yeah.
Library Association's legislative team and their lobbyists are awesome. That has, for a long time, been a really strong part of the organization, and probably, I'd say, the most important part of it. Just because they make it a point to go to legislators, they make it a point to be in front of things as much as they can, and they can give direction where I can't give direction to somebody to advocate. They can, so we can share those resources. Can I talk? I can't remember. I don't know which conversation I've had where. So that would be something that would be, I guess I would.
I think I know I made staff aware of the
Yeah.
resources to the level, and just to understand that while we can't,
Mhm.
however you just described it, we can't.
Say, hey, you
Right.
should call your
You should do
legislator.
this.
Yeah,
Call
right.
this
And say,
county.
here's the
Yeah.
information for you
Yep.
to.
Because it's,
If you're interested,
it's really a
right?
big picture thing. It's
Mhm.
not only state. I mean, this is one of the
Right.
first times where it's been multi-layered at the same time.
Mhm.
You know, we're,
Mhm. And that conference was like last October,
Mhm.
right? At the end of October?
Mhm.
Okay.
Should be one this year at
That-
the
Yeah.
same
in-
time.
Is it earlier this year? It's
I have it on my
October.
calendar.
And the county will pay
Yeah,
memberships.
I didn't get the opportunity to go last year, but I have it on my work calendar in early October, like reminder.
October 9th and 10th in
9th and
St.
10th.
Cloud.
Okay.
Okay.
And yes, we support board members attending that
Okay.
financially and
Well,
anecdotally.
and also memberships, right? To MLA?
I don't think we get memberships,
We haven't
but we
paid
can go to the
memberships, but we can pay
conference.
for the conference
I
fees.
thought
Yeah.
they used to pay memberships too.
So it's the.
I think for
meeting.
staff, didn't you used
Yeah.
to with Carver County?
Yeah, Minnesota
We aren't
Library
able to
Association.
Wow.
Fund
Yep.
memberships for it,
Okay.
yeah.
Is that an
I know in
overnight?
other library
What's
It
systems
is.
that aren't county.
Okay.
Yep,
Overnight.
it's one overnight.
Mhm.
All right.
Or you can
You can yeah.
attend just one or day or the other too.
Okay. Okay, very
Eventually,
good.
all the sessions will get posted, so you can kind of see what you're most interested in, but.
But you don't need to be a member to access the information on the legislative updates.
Right.
So,
I will send some links and information along if you're interested. I can email those out.
I think that would be excellent.
I'd
Yeah.
be glad to do that.
No rush, but
MLA does hire their own lobbying firm.
yep.
Mhm.
normally lobbyist is kind of a 4-letter word in my brain,
Yeah.
but not here, not in this instance.
And they were very successful at the legislature just a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. I'll send a link to the conference
Thank you.
information as well. I'd be glad to do that, so. Thank you, Margot. Any other questions for me that I can try to answer or answer at another time?
Just a very small item.
Sure.
Having to do with the budget information for the individual branches. Are we allocating enough to photocopying for some of these branches? I'm noticing that Victoria has already spent 126% of their budget on photocopying. Watertown 88%, Waconia 102, Chaska 72.
So that's actually revenue coming into us from photocopy and printer fees.
Oh, so it's not an expense, it's not a cost,
Correct.
okay.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Ah, okay, very good, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That helps.
Absolutely,
I
and
just
it
learned
is.
something new.
I was just talking to our accountant that works with us in public services today, and we were talking about the photocopy fees because they have continued to go up in terms of the revenue that's coming in. And I think anecdotally we hear people are not buying printers and ink anymore. We see so much usage from the DMV licensed centers that come over to print. I mean, I would look to Kevin and Margot if there's, other things that you're hearing as well, but.
It's a lot of, well, I remember that's kind of DMV town.
We usually have people waiting at the door when we unlock
Wow,
the DMV.
sure, yeah, I need a copy. They
Yeah.
won't, it's on my phone, but they need a copy.
And the government center
Sure.
being there's a lot of people that go to Chaska for that. Us, it's just a lot of people making copies and a lot of people saying, I don't want to, or my printer broke and I'm tired of dealing with it.
Right.
Which I'm like, yeah, I'm with you. Right now.
Right.
So we're outperforming. It's just
Send
the way-
all your friends for copy needs.
That's
It's just the way the numbers are laid out and in the formatting, I mistook that for expenditure.
No worries.
Understood.
But it's a
Thank you.
good point because we were discussing that today, like, do we budget a little bit larger for those line items for revenue? Because,
Good idea. That'll help.
let's see, where are we at? Are we with?
We are at trustee and commissioner reports.
And this will be Patrick's report. And I do have some notes that he sent along, if I may share those on his behalf.
Please.
So he wanted to note that in May, the 10th anniversary celebration happened at Victoria with the announcement of extended access. And so far, extended access signups are over 50 patrons, with a dozen people having completed orientation for that.
Wow. And that rolls out September, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So we did go live with the application form, so that's, over 50 people have already
Cool.
signed up for the service. I think that must have been the same day they had the Rowe Family Singers at the bandstand, over 100 in attendance with over 2,600 online views because
Wow.
we streamed that live as
Oh,
well.
wow,
That's wonderful.
that's fantastic.
And then his third point, because he always has 3 points, the Chanhassen Craft Swap. There were over 275 shoppers at the event, sponsored by Friends of the Chanhassen Library. 216 people donated craft supplies, 177 of those accepted an early access pass. 39 patrons just wanted to give and wanted nothing in return. 77 hours donated by friends and volunteers over 9 days, May 9th through 17th, by 22 volunteers who also sponsored at the same time a successful pop-up book sale of crafting books. So,
That's impressive.
very well
There's a lot of
received.
very,
Yep.
yeah.
So that's what Patrick had to share. And I believe he's covering a desk this evening.
Yes, he's Chanhassen in Victoria.
Mhm.
Kevin, you want to talk to us about Chaska?
Sure, I'll just cover a couple things. On my report, I have a picture of the rain gutter regatta. That's our partnership with the Scouts. The next one is this month, and it's camping themed. And I know that they're gonna make s'mores. We've been recycling craft materials, going along with what Patrick stated, and been putting them out for families to make things together. And we've been very successful with that one. And my last point is talking about outreach, as we were earlier. May was very busy with visiting schools and daycares and one bike rodeo, and altogether we spoke to over 3,400 people about summer reading.
Fantastic.
And my first grader would be very upset if he saw this picture right here because I cut him out.
Oh, see the lower left?
He's right here.
Oh, he's up.
Above, yeah.
And my daughter came home from school one day and said, Mr. Kevin was there today to talk about summer reading program.
Excellent. Margot, you want to take a break with your hands?
Sure. We have far less to report, and we had to say goodbye to Serena, who was our adult services librarian in Waconia. But the good thing is that she has moved over to the law library and working in Chanhassen. So for her, I know it was a nice move, a good move, but sad for us because she was awesome. The other thing, we did lose another staff person, Shiloh, and I just want to give a shout out because these were both wonderful employees, and the little time I got to work with them, it was very clear how dedicated they were to the work they were doing. And I know Shiloh, I can see her coming back someday maybe. The other thing I wanted to point out was in Norwood Young America, Tricia has been working, and now we are done with the clearing of the space. I don't know if you recall in the space that this open area was very blocked off because the shelves and the posts, and she designed and set up a way that we could reconfigure this and worked with the county. Most of that was done earlier, but the last bits of it to finalize her vision for creating a more open space is completed now, or in May. So that was a very big thing. Watertown, I just want to, I don't know if I have it in this one. I'm sorry, I didn't look at what I said. I should have done that, I'll be honest with you. The Next Chapter Book Club, which is I don't know if you've heard that discussed before, but that's an ongoing program that Bridget has been working with developmental disability adults, and has a book club that is every 2 weeks, and it has been incredibly successful. It has been, and to me, it is reflective of the kind of programming we should be doing across the county. She developed a grant, wrote the grant, was funded, and then implemented this program and has sustained it. And has a very good working relationship with the organizations involved and the people who attend the program. So big shout out to her as well. So with that,
Thank you.
we've just been talking about it, about how if there's anything we could do to improve it. Now we're holding it, and improve doesn't mean changing anything, but how can we build to expand it across the county? But we're holding back on that right now.
Margot, do you know when you talked that Bridget submitted the grant? Was that a Dulkey grant?
Yes.
Yes.
I like to tie it all together.
Yes.
Yep.
Tie it all
Yes.
together.
Absolutely was.
And that,
Probably
probably by August,
Yeah.
we'll, so our Dalkey grant program, we put together a grant board, I can talk, yes. A grant board that reviews the applications in early October. So in August, we'll need one advisory board member here that would be willing to serve on that grant board. And Stacy can speak to that. I didn't add that obviously today, but
Yeah.
it's a really great experience, I think.
Yeah, it is. And I remember you, Ern, were particularly interested. Actually, maybe you both were. After one of our, maybe 2 months ago, meeting when we talked about the Dulkey grant. Did you get the opportunity to go online and read about that yet?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is a great, we don't have to talk about it today if you don't want to, but it's very, I mean, the whole thing is just really, really cool for Carver County to have been, the recipient of that windfall that,
Very fortunate.
mm-hmm, yeah,
So yes, be thinking if anyone would like to serve on that grant board.
yes.
Hint, hint.
Hint, hint. Okay, well, I think that wraps up our agenda. My printer doesn't print on both sides, but the one that I got from work. There's a media packet. Does anyone have questions on the media packet? It looks like there was actually quite a bit.
Quite a bit. It was good
Yeah.
to see.
And I've noticed also that pictures from the craft swap have continued to pop up in the online newspaper and a couple other sources, well after the fact.
Yeah. You said that was at Chanhassen, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Is there one coming up in Waconia down the road?
Yes.
Craft swap.
Yes. and
Cool.
The date, I'd have to look up. But yes, it is.
Okay.
I think it's October, I want to say.
Could very well be right. I'm very present-minded right these days.
Well, without further ado, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned at 5:50.
So see you in August.
Good thing we're both
Yes.
here